Today, I'm going to be a flake. All right, bad joke. But I'm taking you on the filo trail, starting with one of Greece's most recognizable dishes, spanakopita, the savory spinach cheese pie wrapped in flaky pastry. We'll visit a New York diner where this mother of all filo pies is a standard on the menu. Watch a filo artisan ply his trade and stretch his flaky pastry at one of the oldest workshops in Greece. Meet a northern Greek cook who makes light-as-air homemade filo for her traditional cheese and egg pie. And I'll show you how easy this pastry is to make at home in my family recipe for classic spanakopita. So good, I'm gonna cut myself 2 pieces. Along with a flaky chicken pie and a delicious filo dessert, messy orange pie. Join me on my Greek table for a taste of one of Greece's most beloved foods. So good. I was born in New York and visited Greece when I was 12. I fell in love with the place and my husband. I moved to Athens 25 years ago to cook and write about Greece's healthy foods and natural beauty. I'm Diane Kochilas. Yassas. I'm a Queens girl, and I grew up eating in Greek diners. Most Americans got their first taste of Greek food in a Greek diner. What is the most iconic dish on a Greek diner menu? Spanakopita, or what we might call spanakopita, Greek spinach pie. And that's exactly what I'm gonna go and enjoy with my old friends from the neighborhood. Oh, that's a big spanakopita. Spanakopita, the flaky, savory filo pie filled with spinach, herbs, and cheese, is to Greek cuisine what pizza or burritos are to Italian and Mexican, respectively. Too much food.
Hey, but go really slowly, you can pretty much finish everything.
In a day.
Not today.
This is Greek soul food, nourishing, comforting, and filling. Commonly prepared with seasonal ingredients that are on hand or easy to access. Both savory and sweet, recipes are seemingly countless and a measure of the skillfulness of the cook, but they are also surprisingly easy and fun to make. You don't have to be a Greek shepherd's wife to make homemade filo. I've taught many people to make homemade filo, and everyone is surprised at how easy it is. So I've got 3 cups of whole wheat flour, a cup of all-purpose, 3/4 of a cup of water that I'm gonna mix a little salt into, a teaspoon. Half a cup of olive oil. A little bit of balsamic vinegar, a tablespoon to be exact, and half a cup of Greek yogurt. This is gonna be my filo dough for a really traditional Greek dish, which is a spinach pie, spanakopita. This is gonna knead at medium speed for about 7 or 8 minutes. We want a really soft dough. The dough has to be really smooth. And I'm gonna just place this now in a bowl with a little bit of olive oil. And I usually roll it just, you wanna slather it a bit in the oil. I'm gonna let this rest for about an hour at room temperature, wrapped in plastic, and then I'm gonna get started on my filling. I'm starting with some sauteed onion, a little bit of olive oil. I'm gonna cook down my spinach. It's gonna lose a lot of volume. Overall, for this pie, I'm gonna need about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of spinach. I'm just gonna let the spinach cook down. It's only gonna take a few minutes, and then I'm gonna drain it and mix all the rest of the ingredients together. I'm just squeezing out as much of the moisture in here as I can. We don't want the filling to be too wet because then our filo is gonna be soggy. And we don't want it to be so hot that it actually melts the feta that's going into this filling. I'm gonna get my feta cheese in here, and I'm gonna add my herbs, a little bit of parsley, mint, and fresh dill. A little bit of nutmeg goes into this. Nutmeg goes really well with spinach. Extra virgin Greek olive oil. So you can see that the spanakopita filling is pretty creamy, and that's exactly what we want. And when this bakes in between the layers of filo, it's gonna be wonderful. I'm about ready to roll out my filo dough. I just want to sprinkle my work surface. This is flour. You can also do it with cornstarch. I'm gonna divide this up so that the knobs are even, and I can roll them out to fit into my round pan. I just want to shape these into the size balls that I'm going to use. You always want to start with the shape of your pan. When we work with commercial filo, you always need a lot more layers than you need with this rustic kind of pastry because it's much thinner. This is much sturdier. I want to pour some olive oil into my pan. I'm going to put 2 layers of filo dough on the bottom. I find that the easiest way to get this into the pan is to fold it in half and then in half again, so you have almost a little triangle. And you put the point right in the middle of the pan, and then you just open it up. A little bit of olive oil. You want to brush gently, try not to make a tear, but you do want to try to go all the way around. So ready for my second filo. A little bit more flour. Now you want to keep flipping it and changing direction. The reason why I'm doing that is so that the dough circle opens up as evenly as possible. Just want to make sure that it's spread very evenly and pat it down so that the surface is even all over. I'm just going to roll out my next 2 layers of filo dough, the last 2. A little bit of flour. A little bit more olive oil. So this is a much bigger piece. I'm just gonna layer this on top so that it forms its own sort of decorative surface. And this looks really beautiful when it's baked. The next step is to take the overhang and make a beautiful ring. The next and last step is to score this into serving pieces. You never want to draw the knife down. Okay. And then I'm just cutting it the opposite way. So isn't that beautiful? This is going to bake now for about 5 minutes to an hour at 375. Oh, doesn't that look great? I'm gonna cut myself a little piece. It is so earthy and rich. Great filo dough with a lot of great olive oil in it to make it rich but also crispy. The creaminess of the feta cheese, all that beautiful flavor from the spinach, the mint, the dill, the parsley. And I think a really nice white wine called Robola, which is acidic but also fruity, goes really well with this. There are still small workshops throughout Greece where artisans make traditional pastry by hand, both kandaifi, which is like angel hair, and filo. Kandaifi is made by pouring a thin batter through a spout onto a rotating hot metal surface. The strands cook instantly, and masters like Yorgos Hadjiparaskos gather it up with machine-like accuracy and speed. Hand-stretched filo is a dying art form. From a small, fist-sized ball of dough, Yorgos' son Paraskevas is able to turn out an enormous sheet, pulling and stretching gently because it is so elastic. Nowadays, commercial filo is made in machines that churn out the paper-thin sheets fast and efficiently. I used homemade filo pastry in my spanakopita, but for the next dish, my chicken pie, I'm using something a lot easier, commercial filo dough. I've got part of the filling already going here, just a little bit of leek and red onion sauteing, and I'm gonna add a touch of garlic to this. Just really wanna soften this up. We don't want it to be crunchy when we add it to my shredded chicken here. So I just want to warm this. This is really just to toast my pine nuts. And in the meantime, I can start adding everything else to the filling. You can use leftover chicken for this. You can use leftover Thanksgiving turkey. Any meat that you can shred would work in this. So I'm going to add my cheeses. I have a little bit of Greek feta. And I have another Greek cheese in here called kefalotiri. This is a really sharp sheep's milk cheese, really flavorful. I'm adding my pine nuts to this, my raisins, and these are Greek raisins, of course. I have cinnamon, cumin, and a little bit of clove here. And just a little bit of nutmeg. You get the best flavor when you grate it directly. And I'm gonna add mint and parsley. And if you don't have mint or parsley, you could use something else. Basil would be really nice in here. Fresh oregano would work really well. And a touch of olive oil. I guess more than a touch. Sometimes when you make fillings that are a little bit on the heavy side, or they could be a little bit wet if you've got a lot of vegetables in there, you want to add some kind of grain that will absorb some of that excess moisture so that the bottom of the filo isn't soggy after it's baked. So I'm going to add just a touch of rice to absorb whatever excess moisture is in here. Ready for my filo. I'm just going to get my pan ready first. You have to oil it, of course. Filo stresses people out. It might be a little bit cracked or torn if it's all condensed, but it doesn't really matter in the end because it's not going to show. I'm going to cut that just about in half. And let me show you a little trick. So I fold it over exactly like a book and open the first sheet and brush, let's say, the inside of the book jacket with a little bit of olive oil. You just want to work a little bit fast. You really want to get the edges lubricated. That's the most important part. The top sheet stays unoiled for the time being. Folding my filo book in the opposite direction and just opening it this way. And you can see, you know, it's a little bit crinkled in the middle. It doesn't really matter. That is absolutely not going to show. The real point is just to work fast and get those edges covered. And there we go. I got my top layer beautifully oiled there. And then I'm just going to lift up this whole stack. And there are about 8 or 9 sheets here. I actually didn't count. And just place that right in the pan. So we're going to empty our filling right over the surface of the oiled phyllo. The best phyllo pies are the ones that are a little bit on the thin side. The filling doesn't have to be 2 inches thick. I'm pressing it down so that it's really compact and bake better that way. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing for the top sheets. I'm ready to cover my chicken phyllo pie. You want to pat it down. This is also something to remember when you work with phyllo. You want to score it. You don't want to draw the knife all the way down because the phyllo will come apart when you bake it if you do that. But you want to mark your serving pieces. So you draw it up and down. And if it cracks a little bit, it really doesn't matter. No one is gonna see that when it's done. So you can see, you know, that's a pretty good sized piece. That's good lunch. You wanna just dampen the top layer a little bit. So this is ready to go into the oven. I'm gonna bake it at 350 for about 45 minutes to an hour. Kind of depends on your own oven. My pie is pretty much pre-cut, and I'm just cutting through the pieces to make it a little bit easier to get it out. Wow, this smells really good. I can smell the cinnamon and all those great warm spices. And let's put a little garnish on this plate. Just a little bit of parsley. But now I want to taste it, and it looks great. It smells great. The chicken is really mild, but everything else in it is wonderful. Those cheeses, I get all the richness of those sheep's milk cheeses. The pine nuts, the raisins, those great spices, the cinnamon, the cumin, the nutmeg. It's really good. There are so many regional variations of phyllo pastry in Greece, and a slew of new variations as home and professional cooks experiment with new flours, gluten-free dough, and more. Here, a renowned local cook and pastry shop owner in Naousa, northern Greece, is making one of the dozens of cheese pies for which this region is famous. She rolls it very thin, then cuts strips like radii emanating from the center before lubricating them with butter, which is more prevalent than olive oil in cold climates like this. She then folds one strip over the other and rolls out the pastry again. For this cheese pie called spanakopita, or turned, as in coiled pie, she cuts the pastry once more into long strips, which she then coils inside the baking pan. The finished pie gets one more coat of butter before going into the oven. The result is a flaky crust, similar to puff pastry. While savory phyllo pies are one of the most beloved Greek foods, the thin, flaky sheets of phyllo are probably even more famous in the desserts in which they star. Baklava, galaktoboureko, and myriad other traditional phyllo desserts are made all over Greece. I'm making messy orange pie, and this is a phyllo dessert with an orange cream with Greek yogurt and syrup. I'm gonna start with my syrup, 2 cups of water, 1.5 cups of sugar, and I'm just gonna cook that until the sugar dissolves. I'm gonna add my orange zest and 1 cinnamon stick. That's a really Greek combination of flavors. And that's gonna simmer for about 8 to 10 minutes. I want a pretty thin syrup. So I'm gonna make my custard. It's Greek yogurt, sugar, which I start to whisk together, and then I add my eggs. and 1 egg at a time. I'm just gonna add orange juice. A little bit of vanilla extract. Orange zest. And the last thing I'm gonna add to this is melted butter. The next thing that goes into this is my filo. I'm using the filo in quite an unusual way. Just tearing it into shreds. I've absolutely no idea how this dish was invented, but to my mind, it's kind of like a bread pudding made with filo. You want to separate the strips. The pieces should be kind of 1.5-inch thick strips. This is all gonna bake together, and at the end, it reminds me a little bit of the texture of a croissant. It's sort of these uneven layers in between the custard that swell up because of the eggs. It's really good. So I'm just gonna pour my orange custard right into the filo. And I always say, if you don't get your hands dirty, it's not really cooking. So I'm gonna get my hands dirty and just mix this all together. And I'm just gonna empty this into my baking pan. So this is going right into the oven at 375 for about 35 to 45 minutes. It's gonna be nice and golden on top and puffed. This smells so good. The rule of thumb is hot pie or hot cake, cold syrup or cool syrup. And the reason why we want that is so that the hot cake absorbs the cool syrup much more easily. This will take probably about, half hour to absorb the syrup. So if you could put a whole orange grove in a dessert pan, I think this is what it would smell like. It's so seductive. So I'm just gonna cut a little piece. Just a little bit of cinnamon on top because those flavors go really well together. And why not a little bit of mint? This dessert goes really beautifully with a really nice Greek dessert wine. This is a Vendu, a sweet wine from the island of Samos, and it's made with muscat grapes. And you can see it's almost the same color as the dessert. It's filled with flavors of dried citrus and rose petals. And let's see what this tastes like. That is that's heaven. It's really intense orange flavor. And that earthiness from the cinnamon, it's wonderful. It's really delicious, it's really easy to make, and I wish you well. Well, we definitely want to have a spanakopita.
Of course.
You gotta try it, right?
Absolutely.
Here we go, spinach pie with a small Greek salad.
That sounds good.
Okay, what are you getting?
Just a salad, and we'll get some spanakopita.
We'll get some
Or is
spanakopita?
everyone getting their individual?
Danny, you like to share?
Yes, you can have a quarter of my triple decker.
Where do you see the triple decker?
Oh, you can have a quarter.